Alright, so I'm just going to do a quick little 75 here just to kind of show you guys the build a little bit. I haven't pushed it up past 90 yet. I'm still trying to get my paragon level up. As you can see, you can only push it to 200 in the test, and then you got to actually grind it up further than that. So to get my DPS up more, and perfect the build a little bit more, I'm going to need some more time. But this is just the basics of how the build works. So I'm going to show you guys first, and then we'll go over all the gear and the spells and everything. So Alright, so just to get us primed here, I'm just going to throw a couple of our chaos orbs. Here we got our big hydras out. Get our shield up. Now you're going to see some smaller hydras there. Those are coming from the chaos orbs. See a bunch of electricity, chain lightning going on, and you're not going to see chain lightning in the water. Just the chain lightning is painted. It is getting casted every time I cast. First orb. Also from my gear, every time my chain lightning goes off, my gear makes it go off. So, here's triple difference. Just kind of evading through everything. Get my big hydras up. Change frozen orbs, get my little hydras up. Only spell I'm really using once I get to the vine. Keeping my ice barrier up. And my frozen orbs. Now if I do get an extra large group of them that doesn't get pumped up well enough, I do have my inferno on my water. Also fire arrows every now and then. Teleport on my water too. Chain things that pull you back in. I can't stand getting stuck in there, getting stuck in puddles and things like that. So I do have my teleport on my water too to help me get around mobility wise faster if I essentially, we're just chaining frozen orbs. That's doing everything for us, and chaining our hydras. So frozen orb, hydra, and frozen ice barrier. Build is just hydra and more. Just absolutely obliterating everything that is in the back. As you see, I'm constantly in full mana. Occasionally you'll see my life drop down to 0 there. What that is just from the poison damage. I have basically 0 chaos. New chaos changes that they're making. So it basically reduces my life to nothing, but gives me maximum mana, and all damage goes to my mana before it goes to my as long as my mana doesn't run out, I can mana doesn't run out because of a couple items. Paragon, damage reduction, things like that. So essentially, I am unkillable at this point. There's nothing that they can do. I can just stand here and let them put me in. There's nothing that they can do. Our big boy hydras out there. Chain our frozen orb. Keep ice barrier up. Chain and frozen orb. Basically no different than pre the changes that they're coming out with right now. So there's a 75 cleared in probably 2-3 minutes. And like I said, I'm only Paragon 207. As you'll see, I have a lot of room to expand damage in the Paragon board. So let's go back to town. Alright, let's take a look at our skills here first. So in our enchantments, we have the Chain Lightning, obviously. The Chain Lightning enhancement. Chain Lightning forms automatically after spending 77 mana. Now, Chaos or Frozen Orb costs 84 mana. So every time we cast a Frozen Orb, we're also casting a Chain Lightning. The other enchantment is our Familiar enchantment. Each time you summon a conjuration that isn't a familiar, you have a 33% chance to summon a familiar of that same element. So every time I summon one of these hydras myself, or my frozen orb summons a hydra, I have a chance to summon a familiar. So it's constantly summoning my familiars because it's 1/3 of a chance to summon one every time I summon my hydras. So I've constantly got my familiars out. And for the bar, we're looking at Inferno here. As I said, this is situational. If the new item that we're using doesn't group them up well enough, or it's a rather large group, I can use my Inferno to pull them in or do some extra damage, things like that. Obviously Ice Armor here. That's just to keep some damage off of us, keep the reduction down. Also for the extra damage for having a barrier up, which we'll get to here in a minute. And then Frozen Orb, obviously that's the main, or the secondary thing that is doing all of our damage here. It's also casting us our Chain Lightning. It's also casting us the secondary Hydra. Teleport, obviously situational, get us out of a tight spot, do a little bit of damage. Firebolt, just to put something on the bar there. I don't even really use it all that much. And then our big bad boy, the Hydra, that's what the build's kind of focused around. So if we go into our actual build here, obviously when you start at the top here, you got to put a couple points into something. I went Firebolt because our build is mainly revolving around fire. And then you're going to want to put a couple into Elemental Dominance, of course. And then you're also going to want to put a couple here into Devastation. And then we're going to want to put some into Chain Lightning. Enhanced Chain Lightning. This gains a 3% critical strike chance per bounce, and it's constantly bouncing. And then each time Greater Chain Lightning, each time Chain Lightning bounces, it deals 10% increased damage for its duration up to 30%. Give me one. Alright, sorry about that. Each time Chain Lightning bounces, it deals 10% increased damage for its duration up to 30%. And then moving down the line here, obviously we just have Teleport. We don't have anything into it. Obviously we have one into Ice Armor, Enhanced Ice Armor, so we have more mana regeneration while our barrier's up. Then Mystical Ice Armor. While Ice Armor is active, you periodically chill close enemies for 20%, deal 15% increased damage to frozen enemies. Not a big deal, but just something I like to have to do a little bit more crowd control. Energy Focus. This is a big one. We have 2 into it. You generate a barrier of 2%, 2.5% of your maximum life every second, up to 30%. And then Dampen Layer. You gain 10% damage reduction while you have an active barrier. And then also glass cannon, of course, for the increased damage. And then obviously hydra is our main damage dealer here, so we have all of our points into hydra, and then enhanced hydra and invoked hydra. Hydras gain 50% critical strike damage and 20% crit strike chance. We do have one into familiar here, or two into familiar, I'm sorry, and then we have enhanced familiar and invoked familiar. While you have an active familiar, you deal 10% increased damage of its elemental type. It's almost always a fire, because our familiars are based off of our summons, which is a hydra, which is fire, so it gives us increased damage of fire. Then we have mana shield here. Every time you spend 100 mana, you gain 50% damage reduction. We're constantly casting frozen orbs, so that's constantly going off, giving us a mana shield. Gain a stacking bonus for each summon. Primordial bindings, obviously that's very important with our hydras up and our familiars up all the time. And then inner flames, we deal 30% increased damage while we're healthy. We don't have anything else in here. And then obviously we have elemental synergies here because we're using all three types of damage. So they increase 9% damage for each skill of their type. And then we have Inferno, obviously, because we use it occasionally. And then this Inferno, Prime Inferno repeatedly pulls the enemies to its center. That links into Endless Pyre. We deal increased burning damage. This one is kind of optional. We don't do a lot of burning, but it does link us in here into Warmth. Gives us a little bit more healing. I kind of just use those extra points to put them in there because we do occasionally get some burning damage. And then for the last one here, we go down into Essu's Ferocity, which gives us fire. Critical strike damage is increased by 75% against enemies above 50 life. And then the fire critical chance is increased by 40% against enemies below 50 life. Critical strikes that kill enemies or hit a boss grant both damage bonuses against all enemies for 3 seconds. So that's a big one right there. A lot of this stuff, and evocation, I forgot, that gains us our 20% cooldown reduction, obviously. And permafrost, you deal 30% increased damage while you have your barrier. So that's another big one, since we always have our ice armor up. These ones right here, they're kind of not necessary. You can put points into them if you'd like. And our paragon, I might build a paragon board for this one later. But for our basic first board here, I use Conjurer. And then for this board here, we use the Elemental Summoner node. And for the glyph, I'm using the Elementalist glyph. This is going to be one where I'm going to be putting a lot more intel bonuses, because the more intel you put into it, the more damage you're going to get out of it. So then the next one here, we have Enchant Master board, and this one we have the Pyromaniac. This one I'm actually going to need to put some points into it for the willpower for the bonus, which is going to be, I actually have a point to spend, so let's do that. And then the next board over here, we have Static Surge, and the glyph on this one is Unleash. And then this board here, we have Searing Heat, which I'm trying to work my way over to still. Obviously, like I said, I don't have all my Paragon points yet. But the glyph for this one is Electrocute. So a lot of our damage is based off of fire, but also electric. You're going to see here if we go down. So our critical strike damage is 1283. Our fire damage is 1232. Our damage with lightning is 1326. And our damage with conjure is 1557. So obviously our hydra is our main one. I would like to get some more fire damage in here, you know, bring that up to about where lightning is or even higher. That's what I'm going to be working on next with the gear. Armor, we are in Torment 4, and I'm still at 1471. As you saw at the beginning here, we are over 75 with all of our resistances. Cooldown reduction, we're at about 75% cooldown reduction. As I said earlier, if we look at my health here, I'm at 55 life, which doesn't matter because I'm at 23,500 mana. So how we get to that is this new chaos perks over here, what we're using. The first one is explosive combination. Casting a basic skill increases the damage of your next core skill by 50%, stacking up to 3 times. So this is where casting the firebolt every now and then does help get our damage up, because it helps get our core skill, which is a hydra now, because hydra is now a core skill, that helps get the damage up of the hydra. The next one here, your base core skill ranks increase their mana cost by 10% and further increase their damage by 20. So this is your core skill, which is a hydra, by the way, from our gear, which we'll see in a minute. And then mana infused conjurations. Your conjurations are empowered and deal 30% increased damage, but each one drains 5 mana per second. So you're going to constantly see me losing, 5 mana here and there, but it basically stays right at the top here. I almost never have any mana missing out of my bar. So it's not really that big of a deal. And we do that for the hydra, periodically creates firewalls toward its target. So that's those big walls or the trails of fire that you see, which occasionally leaves enemies burning, which does a little bit of extra damage. It's not huge, but every little bit helps when we're pushing on these solo Sorc builds. The main one here is Mana Shield. You have 99% reduced maximum life, but any damage you would take is dealt to your mana before your life. If you've not taken damage for the last 4 seconds, your mana regeneration is increased by 5,000%. You gain 400% increased maximum mana, and each point of intelligence also increases your maximum mana by 1. So we're getting point for point intelligence for mana, and we also gain 400% increased maximum mana. That's what gets us to our 23,000 mana here. Now, if we look at our gear, we're using the Harlequin Quest, and this is on the test server, guys. So, I mean, you're not going to get 4-star gear right off the bat. You're going to have to kind of work this stuff up. Took me a couple hours to get all this gear, proper. But, yeah, I'm mainly focusing on maximum resource on that third roll. And cooldown reduction for the evade and the teleport, the ice armor, and then we do have the summon the Naguse, which gives us our wolf and our extra wolves. Shroud of the False Death, obviously we went into the all stats, gives us some life, resource regeneration. I went Igni Lum with this, which cast a non-basic skill to gain Sword Offering, so restores 17% of our primary resource, which is our mana, which helps counteract that mana that we're losing, as you saw over here in the Chaos, that drains that 5 mana per second. This will kind of help offset that, so that 17 primary resource. Now, this is the new armor. You'll see that these are axle conduit, which is usually a leg piece. I have them switched into gloves, even though they're the picture of boots. They know that that's a known issue right now. I have them all the way maxed out into resource generation and maximum. This is going to jack your mana way, 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 way up, which is what we want. Then the legs is obviously our Ophidian Iris, which used to be our necklace. It's now a leg piece. It does give us the extra 120% damage for the Hydra heads. It does turn Hydra into a core skill, and I have it maxed out for Primordial Binding. You can get a 4-star if you want. The attack speed and pyromancy damage aren't a huge necessity. We just really wanted that intelligence and the Primordial Binding from it, along with the the affect there. So moving right along, this is the new item, the galvanic azurite, which is normally a ring, but it is able to be chaos changed into boots. So this gives us a little bit of critical strike chance, not a big deal. The main thing there is that lightning damage, the cooldown reduction, and the elemental synergies. Then the affect, which at lightning damage leaves enemies magnetized for 4 seconds, causing them to emit crackling energy, and increasing all lightning damage they take from you by 72%. If 2 magnetized enemies hit each other with crackling energy, they pull each other together. So this is what's grouping up everybody in those pits, like you saw, without me having to do the inferno. It's a huge, huge, huge benefit, as well as that 72% multiplicative damage, plus the 146% lightning damage, plus the cooldown reduction, plus the elemental synergies ranks. This is really just a masterpiece item in a template like this. So we don't have to rely on Inferno to try and group stuff up, and we can only use Inferno every so often. This is just constantly doing it for us. Then we have our wand here. Not the best wand in the world. It's just something I went with for now. Intelligence, critical strike damage. The main thing here is that you want to have your casted hydra heads completely maxed out. Hydra damage. For the imprint, I went with conjuration skills that have up to a 45% chance to gain 1 rank when conjuration skills, plus 1 rank to your conjuration skills for 12 seconds. This can stack up to 10 times. So this is going to make your hydras just super, super, super big, OP. And then for our focus here, this was actually a really good roll. I just happened to get Intel max life damage, hydra damage, and casted hydra heads. Then the imprint is Hydra's deal, 0.5% increased damage per mana you had when summoned, up to 500 mana. We're always over 500 mana, so it doesn't matter. Casting Hydra consumes all your mana. But this is only... A lot of people are confused. They're like, well, why doesn't Hydra use all my mana anymore? I don't know if Blizzard meant to do this or not, but it does not consume all your mana, I'm assuming, because they're only going up to 500. So if you have over 500, it's only going to consume 500. But, I mean, I don't know. So it's not consuming my whole mana bar. They may change this in the future, which may change this build in the future. So just be aware of that. Then for our ring, the Starless, obviously want the core skills and the critical strike chance. Then spending the primary resource reduces the resource cost of your skills and increases your damage by 10% for up to 3 seconds, up to 50%. So there's another 50% damage increase there. Obviously Tau Rasha's, for the cooldown reduction, the non-physical damage, and then the affect on it, casting a Pyromancy, Shock, Frost, or skill increases your damage by 17.5% for 8 seconds, stacking once per per element. Casting again refreshes all bonuses if the previous skill was a different element. This does work with the Frozen Orb, and then we're casting our Fire Bolts, and then the Chain Lightning that's getting casted off of the Frozen Orb. So it's constantly casting all 3 of those, and then it's stacking once per element. So that's giving us our 17.5%. It refreshes the bonuses all the time. The last one here is the Fractured Winter Glass. This is the one that really makes the build work. Conjuration cooldowns are reduced by 0.03 seconds when a frozen orb explodes. There is no cooldown on the Hydra anyways, but we have the non-physical damage, and then the +9 to primordial bindings, and then 34% chance for frozen orb projectiles to cast twice. And then the affect here is what really makes it all come together. Casting Frozen Orb has a 61% chance to spawn a random conjuration on your action bar when it explodes. So that is the smaller hydras that you were seeing getting spawned. They have a 61% chance to cast when I cast every frozen orb I cast. Then, lucky hit, your conjurations have up to an 84% chance to launch a frozen orb at nearby enemies. So, my hydras are not only doing their hydra damage, my hydras also have an 84% chance to launch another frozen orb. And frozen orbs have a 34% chance to cast those frozen projectiles twice. That's why you see it getting really nutty and just kind of getting out of control. Because the hydras are casting frozen orbs, I'm casting frozen orbs, and there's constantly 4 hydras up, and every frozen orb I cast is casting another hydra, every frozen orb I cast is casting the chain lightning. And we're just constantly refreshing all 3 energy types by casting the firebolt, the frozen orb, which casts the chain lightning. So that's all 3 energy types. We're constantly keeping our barrier up, mainly for, like I said, the damage increase, and then we're constantly keeping these big bad boy hydras up. So that's how you guys can keep that same build from basically last season. Just instead of ball lightning, we're going to change to chain lightning, as you saw there. And the skill tree here, this one, because it's going to bounce around, and it works really well with our Axel conduit. Right here, chain lightning alternates between orbiting you and seeking up to 3 enemies. When it returns, it consumes 6 mana for each active chain lightning. After consuming 66 total mana, the bolt explodes for 4291 lightning damage. Chain lightning expires if you don't have enough mana for it to consume. We always have enough mana for it to consume, so it never expires. So once we get that chain lightning rolling, I can literally just run through the dungeon, and it's always going. The chain lightning just never stops, and it just keeps bouncing around and seeking targets. Because we always have enough mana up for it. So between that and the frozen orbs with the fractured glass and the hydra heads with our Ophidian iris, taking advantage of those 3 items and then those 3 spells, and then just stacking electric damage and fire damage, you're just going to be putting out constant massive waves of damage. As you can see here, I haven't gotten up to 90 yet. I did try an 85 earlier. I did do an 85 earlier. It did slow down a little bit. I need to get my damage up some more. I need to get some more paragon levels, and they're a little bit slow at 85. I can do 85s obviously because I unlocked level 90, but they're a little bit slower. So it's quicker for me to do 280s or 375s in the time that I do 185 to get my experience further, to get more paragon points, so that I can put more into my paragon board here. Like I said, there's some of these I still need to fill out this board. I haven't even made it to my legendary node yet. That's going to be a huge increase in my fire damage and crit strike damage. There's still a couple rare nodes here, a couple magic nodes here that I want to get for more fire damage, and there's also a couple more nodes over here that I still need to fill out to gain some more damage from that. So once I gain those and fully fill this out, I'm figuring probably by Paragon 250, I should be able to easily clear Paragon 100s. Maybe 105s with this build pretty quickly, pretty easily. Like I said, just casting ice armor and frozen orb. So this is my first build that I've actually made myself. I didn't look up any builds or anything. Spent a couple hours looking at everything and the new items and kind of put this together. So if you guys like the build, go ahead and give me a like, give me a subscribe. And let me know if you guys have any questions or comments. I will try and get this on one of the Diablo sites, so you guys can actually see every paragon node once I have it filled out more. I'll try and get that done in the next day or two for you guys, and I'll leave a link down below. Thanks for watching.